And we're live. Welcome to the Bitcoin Digest. This is episode 4 on the 16th of May 2023. We're going live a little bit later than usual. So I'm not expecting anyone to join this particular Zoom call, although people are still free to join. The link is always available, and people can join via the meeting ID and passcode, as can be seen on screen. Again, this is live, and so anything can happen when we go live, so just bear that in mind. Again, we're just here to talk all things Bitcoin. Everything goes as long as it's Bitcoin related. Only one rule that we withhold on this platform. Very humbly, we say no talking about shitcoins. Of course, unless you're dumping on shitcoins. Now, without further ado, the key things we're going to be looking at today, again, we're going to take a quick look at the Clark Moody dashboard. And when I mean quick, I mean quick. And the mining mempool, we'll take a look at that as well. And then I've got a couple of articles, as always, which I'd like to delve into today. And so the main one is that the number of Bitcoin addresses, the number of addresses that holds at least one Bitcoin has hit 1 million. So that's a big milestone. The adoption of Bitcoin is very real indeed. And these stats are really clear signs of the adoption of Bitcoin, even though this may not necessarily be reflected in the price, but these data points are very real and important. And the other article that I was going to delve into is regarding countries beginning to trade outside of the US dollar, which could arguably be said to undermine the hegemony of the US dollar, the petrodollar system. So again, we'll delve into that and talk about that. So onto the Clark Moody dashboard. Bitcoin is currently sitting at $26,990. $1 will get you 3,705 sats, and the market cap of Bitcoin is back down to about $522.9 billion. In terms of mining, we have the hash rate is currently at 352.8 exahashes, and we have each block, the block time is 9 minutes and 45 seconds, which means that it's less than, it's almost 15 seconds less than what it normally would take to make a block, 15 seconds quicker than what it should normally take to make a block. So obviously blocks are still coming in relatively faster than usual. And so difficulty retarget, the date still remains the 18th of May, which is in 2 days' time for the difficulty adjustment. And we are expecting an upwards adjustment of 2.2%. Block subsidy remains the same, so I'm not going to read any of that. And the halving date remains the same, so I'm not going to read that. So it's 22nd of April 2024. So I think I'll leave it at that with the Clark Moody's dashboard. Moving on to the mempool, we can see here that mempool remains full. We've got the last block was 96 sats v byte, and the one before that was 26 sats v byte. So these are still relatively expensive. So just bearing that in mind. We've still got about 196 blocks in the mempool waiting to be confirmed. So that's a significant amount of transactions indeed. The block rewards appear to have come back down to normalcy. So we're talking in terms of fees on top of the block, on top of the subsidy. So obviously you've got 6.25 BTC subsidy, and the fees on top of that is not quite. It's around one Bitcoin or less. So that's significantly less in comparison to a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, where they were coming in at about 6 Bitcoin in fees alone on top, in addition to the 6.25 block subsidy. So that is it for the mempool. Things are calming down. TikTok next block. The blocks keep moving. And I just wanted to dispel one more myth that people say, oh, well, you know, the Bitcoin's broken or something along those lines because people can't get their transactions in. Anyone can get their transaction in. You just have to pay a higher fee. If you want to get your transaction in right this second, if you pay anything above 92 sats v byte, your transaction will confirm within 10 minutes. So how it works really and truly, it's a bidding system. People are bidding to get into a block. So this particular block, you're simply bidding to get into this block. Now, the bids that are currently winning are all of the bids that are over and above 92 sats v byte. Or you could argue that it's some of 83 sats v bytes luckily have gotten in, but arguably they shouldn't get in because you've got some 88 sats v bytes in here. So really and truly, it's 92 sats v bytes. Anything above 92 sats v bytes guarantees to get you into this block. But to be absolutely sure, and so that your transaction doesn't get kicked down, you might want to bid a little bit more above the 92 sats v bytes. You might want to bid something like 100 sats v bytes. And that would effectively guarantee that your transaction gets confirmed. So Bitcoin is not broken. The mempool isn't broken. It's just busy. And when it's busy, you pay more. It's really that simple. And I just don't understand why people think that things are broken. It doesn't make any sense. If people take the time and look at these things, they'll actually understand what's going on. But people don't, and people never understand it. And they make criticisms from a point of ignorance. Now, if I can get this, and I'm not very clever, I say that a lot, and it's true, I'm not very clever, but if I can get it, then anyone can get this. Anyone can understand this. I don't understand how this can be any difficult. So don't believe what people say. Bitcoin is working exactly as planned, exactly as built, exactly as designed. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the network whatsoever. It's absolutely working perfectly. It's a beautiful. This is how monetary system should work. It should be a system that is based on fixed rules that people can understand and follow, and that those rules do not change, so that people can plan around those rules. And as long as those rules are in place, there is predictability. And this is predictable. Every 10 minutes, a block will confirm or thereabouts. And that's all you need to know. There is no one's going to guarantee. This is not a welfare system. We have to guarantee that you only pay 1 sat v byte. There's no fixed rule that you have to pay 1 sat v byte. If the mempool is empty and isn't quite full, then yeah, you might get away with 1 sat v byte, but there's no rule that says it has to be 1 sat v byte. If the mempool gets busy, then you have to pay a lot more than 1 sat v byte. That's the end of it, and you just have to get on with life. So yeah, another rant, which wasn't really expected, but there we are. Moving on from the mempool, let's get into the first article. This article is about Bitcoin addresses holding 1 Bitcoin or more have reached 1 million. So we've got 1 million, at least one, now got 1 million addresses that has at least 1 Bitcoin or more in them. And that's huge. We know that Bitcoin is currently sitting at 27, thereabouts $27,000 or $26,900. So 1 million addresses has 26 to $27,000 in them in Bitcoin value. In dollar value, apologies, holds $27,000 worth of Bitcoin value in them. That's incredible. Let's get into this article. The number of Bitcoin wallet addresses holding 1 whole Bitcoin or more has surpassed the 1 million mark. The 1 million whole coiner milestone was reached on May 13, according to data from Glassnode. As the price of Bitcoin fell more than 65% over the course of last year, the number of wallet addresses holding 1 Bitcoin or more spiked, with the most notable surges occurring during an acute market crash in June and from November 11, the date that FTX collapsed and subsequently filed for bankruptcy. In total, a whopping 190,000 or so whole coiners were added from early February 2022 as the price of Bitcoin fell from its November 2021 highs. Glassnode co-founder Megan Tropic told his 54,000 Twitter followers that the best time to buy Bitcoin is when there's blood in the streets. His comments come in the wake of numerous major bank collapses in the United States, as well as the Fed looking to potentially pause interest rate hikes in the coming months. These are some of the reasons why Glassnode said that it remains confident that Bitcoin can reach a price of $35,000 in the midterm. While the round number 1 million marks a new notch in the record books, it's worth pointing out that 1 Bitcoin wallet address doesn't always represent a single person. Many crypto investors have multiple Bitcoin addresses, and other addresses belong to major institutions like cryptocurrency exchanges and investment firms that typically own large sums of Bitcoin. According to the data from crypto analytics provider CoinGlass, of the roughly 19 million Bitcoin currently in circulation, 1.89 million of these Bitcoin are worth $50.7 billion are held on major centralized exchanges such as Binance and Coinbase. Further, a staggering 3 million Bitcoin worth 80.4 billion and accounting for 17% of the total circulation supply are lost forever, according to estimates from Glassnode, which draws the figures from a combination of data including Bitcoin sent to burn addresses, wallets with lost keys, and large accounts that have remained untouched for more than a decade. So there you are, very interesting. So there's some nuances there, of course, that of course you've got exchanges which hold large sums of Bitcoin in their custody. But then again, the articles also pointed out very, very fairly that since the demise of FTX, there was a surge in number of addresses, which could be an indication that people were moving their coins off of exchanges and moving into their own self-custody. And that's a good thing. And the more people learn that self-custody is the best way, i.e., not just adopting Bitcoin, but adopting a Bitcoin lifestyle, i.e., taking into control your own Bitcoin, then once people start to learn that, the better the network is going to be, the stronger the network will be, the more resilient the network will be if more and more people self-custody their Bitcoin, because it means that it's not centralized. Those coins are not centralized, because this is the effect of centralization. You have effectively 1.89 million of Bitcoin in the hands of just a few exchanges such as Binance and Coinbase. Now, that is not healthy. It's better now, it's getting better, but in this, it could be much better. It could be zero. It could be 0. It could be a much, much lesser than, it could be orders of magnitude lesser than that, in terms of being held on exchanges. And that would make the security, because what you could have, this is a honeypot. Why this is not a good thing is that this is a honeypot. It means that both Binance and Coinbase would be targets for, these honeypot attacks, where it's a simple target. They know that's where the money is, and people just and then all these scammers go and attack that wallet, or attack the company to try and see if they can find some vulnerabilities in their security, so that they can then steal the Bitcoin from people. And usually the vulnerabilities would not necessarily they have anything to do with the actual Bitcoin wallet, or the actual the seed phrase, or the private keys of the Bitcoin. It's more to do with the accounting, the accounting arrangements that they have between Coinbase has with its clients, and that itself has nothing to do with Bitcoin. That's just some general accounting ledger that Coinbase maintains, and however people connect to them, and however people provide and get information from Coinbase, those things have vulnerabilities and could be attacked. And that's where most of these attackers get a lot of joy. They get hold of their personal details, use that to get access and control of that person's account, or that customer's account. And then once they've got hold of the customer's account, they just basically execute a trade to withdraw Bitcoins into some random wallet, and the money's lost. And lots of this happens a lot of the time with exchanges. But exchanges, they probably it's a numbers game for them. If they're holding 1.89 million, and they're getting attacked every day, and they're losing, let's say, 0.9 or 0.1 Bitcoin per day, then for them it's nothing. The massive benefit they have from holding 1.89 million Bitcoin, for them is still worth it. So the moral of the story is, to make the network stronger, more and more people need to withdraw their money from these exchanges and hold their own keys. Then it makes it much more difficult for attacks to be launched on Bitcoin. But this is very positive news. The fact that there are 1 million Bitcoin addresses that hold more than one Bitcoin, hold one or more Bitcoin within it. Excellent. Now moving on to the next article. So this one is more economics based as opposed to Bitcoin based, but I think it's still relevant and to the whole Bitcoin story, because currently the world dominant currency is the US dollar. We've got the petrodollar system, which was brought in place and established around the 70s, where the US agreed to provide weapons and military support to Saudi Arabia, so long as Saudi Arabia agrees that they would only ever sell oil in dollars. So whoever wants to buy oil would need to pay dollars for them. And ever since then, all trades around the world, international trades around the world, had to be conducted in dollars. And that's the world reserve currency status that the US has enjoyed for well over 40 years. And gradually over the years, the US have protected that right, that status. Lots of examples that can be given. The examples of Iraq, Saddam Hussein being toppled over when he attempted to get away from the petrodollar system and try to carry out arrangements in his own currency or even using gold. Then he was toppled. So there are many examples of that, and most countries have not attempted to do this. But more recently, we can see that ever since and it may not necessarily be related to it, but ever since the war, the Ukrainian war began, more and more countries have become bolder, or should I say emboldened to challenge this status quo, this hegemony that the US dollar holds, and have started to carry out transactions outside of the US, international transactions outside of the US dollar. I mean, some of it may also be as a result of necessity, because recently, in the past few months, the US Federal Reserve has embarked on raising interest rates, which an interest rate is the cost of money, right? If you borrow money at a high interest rate, then you're going to have to pay a higher return. You have to pay a higher amount when paying back the money. So you have to pay higher interest plus the principal sum back. But if interest rates are low, then you don't have to pay quite as much. And so since the interest rate has increased, and this is obviously done by the Federal Reserve to fight inflation. As they say, the cure for high prices is high prices, and so that seems to be part of the logic of the Federal Reserve for raising interest rates. But the consequences of that are felt around the world, not just here in the US, not just in the US. I'm not in the US, I'm in the UK, but not just in the US, but across the world. The impact of raised interest rates is felt. And so countries like this feel compelled to, because when they run out of dollars, then what can they do? They have to revert to other things. Otherwise, they have to go out and buy dollars and get dollars. And that's going to cost them because interest rates are high. So it's not easy. But let's get into this article because it does make for some really profound reading. Bangladesh and India have decided to conduct trade settlements in their own currencies, bypassing the dominance of the US dollar. According to sources from the Bangladesh Bank, the decision was made due to the issues of liquidity in foreign currency that Bangladesh faces, which are disrupting the flow of imports to the country. Bangladesh and India to conduct bilateral trade in national currencies. Governments of Bangladesh and India have decided to conduct their bilateral trade settlements in national currencies away from the dominance of the US dollar. According to local sources, the decision would have the objective of safeguarding the flow of imports to Bangladesh, which is currently facing US dollar liquidity issues as a result of the effects of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Furthermore, this decision would also cut a series of costs related to the usage of the US dollar, switching it out for Indian rupees and Bangladesh takas. Mesbah Haq, executive director of the Bangladesh Bank, stated, India is a major trade partner of Bangladesh. Bangladesh imports a huge quantity of goods from India. Thus, such a decision will cut the cost of business, speed up transactions, and boost regional trading. According to the bank, Bangladesh imports almost $14 billion worth of goods from India, exporting only around $2 billion. Whilst the deal aims to benefit Bangladesh, Bangladesh can only pay for Indian imports in the rupee in the same quantity they export to India. However, Hark remained on the remarked on the importance of this agreement. He stated, "We are always aware of how to cut the trade gap. In reality, Bangladesh is an import-based country, and India is one of the major countries we import from. So the decision will help in the long term for both countries." ARC estimated this process would start in June, as banks in the two countries are already opening transaction accounts with their respective counterparts to facilitate the settlements. Part of the cost-cutting benefit comes from avoiding the currency conversions that have to be done several times in traditional settlements. The Reserve Bank of India introduced this form of settlement in its latest foreign trade policy guidance implemented on April 1st, which allows countries with a dollar squeeze to pay for imports in India rupees. And that's very interesting. Other countries have also substituted the use of the US dollar to settle bilateral trade transactions recently. Argentina decided to pay for Chinese imports using the Chinese yuan in order to safeguard its dwindling dollar reserves. Brazil has also already completed its first yuan-based settlements with China, and BRICS nations will discuss the issuance of a bloc-wide currency to substitute the US dollar. So there again, you can see the game theory playing out here. It's really interesting. And what is even more telling is that the US hasn't done anything about this. And the lack of action by the US is only going to embolden these countries to do more. It was the petrodollar system because, in addition to purchasing the petrol using the dollar, that was the counter to that was that the US government would supply military and weapons, and also will defend the system with its military industrial complex. But that military industrial complex seems to be asleep or in a coma or dead. Either way, it's inactive. And that is a telling sign. And that is only, as I said, would only embolden countries to continue to get off the US dollar system, petrodollar system, and start to trade independently. Now, that, of course, would mean that it opens up the door for other currencies to take center stage, and may not necessarily take center stage, but at least it opens up the door. And in this circumstance, Bitcoin can only be a beneficiary, because another thing to bear in mind is that one of the problems they've talked about here, and I'll repeat this bit here, which I think is important to note, is that they can't settle all of the payments because you've got two competing currencies. So it says, according to the bank, Bangladesh imports almost $14 billion worth of goods from India, exporting only $2 billion. And the effect of that is that whilst they are able to pay for some of those goods, they will be paying for, so Bangladesh will be paying for those goods based on any exports they receive. So it says, whilst the deal aims to benefit Bangladesh, Bangladesh can only pay for Indian imports in the rupees in the same quantity that they export to India. So when when Bangladesh exports $2 billion worth of goods and services, it receives rupees for those goods and services. And then it can only pay back in rupees for the rest of that. And then it now has to buy more rupees to pay for the rest of the $12 billion worth of imports that it takes in from India. So it's got an issue there, which means that the same problem it has in terms of buying dollars is it's also going to still have buying rupees, albeit it's a bilateral arrangement. You're not having to go through a third currency to come back into it. Whereas if you think of something like Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin can act as that go-between because everyone buys Bitcoin and then everyone can just exchange their Bitcoin, right? So it's much more, and Bitcoin is a lot more neutral. It's neutral money. It's money that's not manipulated. So countries can be confident that when they buy and hold Bitcoin, there is no manipulation going on. There's no debasement of Bitcoin because Bitcoin cannot be debased because no one can increase the supply. The supply of Bitcoin is fixed. At the moment, we are at the rate of 6.25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes, which is about 900 Bitcoin in a year. So that supply is fixed and capped and cannot be increased at all. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin. So, countries can be reassured that there wouldn't be any debasement of it. So they can, for me, Bitcoin is first and foremost a world reserve asset. It's a world reserve asset first and foremost, where people can store their wealth. So, in Bitcoin, and be sure that over a long-term period, they will maintain the value of their wealth. So that's really important. And I think nation states could start adopting Bitcoin, and especially in situations like this, and use Bitcoin as the reserve asset for storing wealth and for exchanging between countries. That balance of payments, a balance of exchanges between countries, it can be done in Bitcoin. And they only need to worry about holding Bitcoin, and they can mine Bitcoin. Like we thought yesterday's episode, we talked about the Kingdom of Bhutan and also the United Arab Emirates both mining Bitcoin. Now they can mine the Bitcoin and then use that Bitcoin to pay for any exports. That's a beautiful thing. Now imagine that. You've got free trapped energy that is being wasted. You mine that, use that energy, and you mine Bitcoin. The Bitcoin that you get, you use to settle international trade. How simple is that? And the country that receives Bitcoin for the goods and services that they've delivered, they can be rest assured that they've received not some good that can be inflated away like the US dollar, which went through periods of massive inflation. And the US over the past 40 years have been exporting their inflation. I'm sure most people have seen this, but I think it's still worth just showing the again, we're doing this live. I wanted to see the image. This is the image. So as you can see, and this image is not like some random guy on YouTube. This image is not some random guy on YouTube. This image is on the Federal Reserve's own official website. And you could see that this is literally on the Federal Reserve's own official website, and it's a consumer price index for all urban consumers' purchasing power of a consumer dollar in US city average. And this is an average that's gone all the way from 1920s all the way to 2020. So over a period of 100 years, the US dollar has gone from 1,000, and it's now purchasing $1,000 worth of purchasing power is now got 33. That's a 97% loss of purchasing power over a period of 100 years. That's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. And people never understand this. People just don't get this. But this is completely disgusting, that people's purchasing power could be eroded this much. This is a classic example of something that is trending towards zero. I mean, it's not a meme. This is not a meme. This is sad. This is a sad state of affairs that, people's purchasing power is trending towards zero. Now, why would anyone want to store their wealth in this? You wouldn't want to store your wealth in this from 1930 all the way to 1970, or even from 1970 all the way to 2020. She's just losing purchasing power. It's ridiculous. So this Bitcoin fixes this, literally, right? Bitcoin is a solution to this, right? Because Bitcoin's value cannot be changed. You cannot increase the supply. And this here is all due to inflation, consumer price index, purchasing power. It's all due to inflation. It's increase in the supply of money that results in this phenomena right here. Now, if you ask anyone how much dollars there are in the world, I'd like someone to tell me how much dollars there are in the world, because no one knows the answer to that. Not the US, not the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, who is charged with creating dollars, they couldn't tell us how much dollars there are in the world. But I can tell you literally how much Bitcoin there are in the world. And it's right here. Money supply of Bitcoin, 19,375,230.71 Bitcoin to the 0.71 Bitcoin. I tell you exactly how much Bitcoin there is. I could tell you how much Bitcoin has ever been issued. It's 92.26% of the total supply of Bitcoin that will ever be issued, that has been issued to date. And I could tell you how much Bitcoin is going to be issued in the future, all the way to 2140, and that's 1,624,549.98 Bitcoin left to be issued. And can you see the difference between this and this system? And tell me if this system isn't completely and utterly superior to this system. This is the future of money right there. That is the future. And this this is trending towards zero. And that is no hyperbole. That is no exaggeration. It literally is trending towards zero. And you see, going back to our story here of Bangladesh, countries, why would you put your money, why would you store your money, your wealth, in a currency that's trending towards zero? Why? Why would any nation state do that? When you could store your money in this, which never loses purchasing power, the issuance is guaranteed. You know, the rate of inflation is the lowest of any asset class, 1.75% inflation and falling, and it will continue to fall. By this time next year, by literally this time next year, May 2024, we will have, you can only get 3.125 Bitcoin per block every 10 minutes. That's a halving of the supply of Bitcoin. 3.125 Bitcoin. So therefore, the rest of the Bitcoin that's in circulation becomes more valuable because the supply that's coming onto the market is being halved. It's been halved from 900 a year to 450 a year. And that will do something to the price. Maybe, it may not, I don't know, but most likely, in my view, probably would. And so why wouldn't you store your time, your energy in this sort of wealth, store of value? You know, it really is a true store of value. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that episode. We'll draw that to a close right there. And just want to say again, don't just adopt Bitcoin, adopt a Bitcoin lifestyle to avoid getting wrecked. And I'll see you next time. Take it easy.